Well, this certainly has been an ongoing discussion as we get further into the week. The recent attempt to traffic more than 400 Zimbabwean children to South Africa has prompted the Border Management Authority to extend its operating hours at its busiest border posts. On Saturday, 42 buses en route to South Africa were stopped in search and a sting operation at the border post in Musina, Limpopo. The unaccompanied children were returned to Zimbabwe. But to unpack the operations of the child trafficking network, we are joined via Teams by Patience Zhou, who is from the Save the Children organization. Patience, good morning to you. Thank you so much for speaking to us. I mean, talk to us about the work of Save the Children and really how it relates to matters such as these, particularly we are speaking about child trafficking.
Good morning, and thank you for having us.
Sure.
So Save the Children is an independent child rights organization. We work to fight for children's rights, and we ensure that children are protected. We also ensure that children are given a good start to life, and we also work with children to ensure that their voices and their needs are amplified. Now, coming to the issue of trafficking, we work to ensure that child victims of trafficking are protected. We work with different stakeholders, including the government and other NGOs, to ensure that the rights and the protection of victims of trafficking are offered protection according to the needs of children and age-appropriate needs. We also support in terms of case management, including across borders, where we work even with governments of Zimbabwe, of Mozambique, and of Lesotho to ensure that the children, they are repatriated safely to their countries of origin if it is safe to do so.
Yeah, so let's actually talk a little bit about what happens to the 443 children that were then found at the border post in Musina in Limpopo, where we believe that they've been trafficked, where we say that they have been sent back to Zimbabwe. Do we know that these children have made it home safely, if at all?
Okay, so I think for us the concern is exactly that, to say we are saying these children were trafficked. So I think to unpack what trafficking is the taking of children from safe environments for exploitation, which can include sexual exploitation or labor exploitation. In instance, we haven't heard of any allegations of that, which to us is appearing as child smuggling. Child smuggling is the taking of children and bringing them into a country where they do not have the valid documents or the valid visas that are required by that country, which in this case is appearing to be so. So if these children were handed over back to immigration officials in Zimbabwe, then that's the rightful process to take, only if they were victims of smuggling, not trafficking. But you find that in most instances we use trafficking and smuggling interchangeably. So there is need for our communities to understand the difference between child smuggling and child trafficking.
Yeah, so obviously smuggling, trafficking, both of them illegal acts, but I think it's important to make the distinction between the two, because when the story hit, one of the discussions that we started seeing taking place in the country was, well, maybe this wasn't necessarily child trafficking, but schools have closed in Zimbabwe. Children may be traveling to South Africa to reunite with their family members that are living in the country. I mean, is that possibly what we're seeing here? And if that's the case, how often then are we seeing children being smuggled through the borders?
So most of the time, those are the battles for South Africa during this period of the year, festive, where the parents that are in South Africa are expecting their children to come into the country without the required documentation. I think here we'll be looking at, between South Africa and Zimbabwe, there is no need for a visa, but a valid passport is required, and additional requirements depending on Home Affairs. Sometimes they would require an affidavit stating who is this person that is traveling with the child. So if those things are not there, then Home Affairs could have the authority to say these children are not coming into the country and hand them over back to the authorities of Zimbabwe.
Okay, so when these children then are handed back to the authorities of Zimbabwe, and I guess this is the question then that we look at later, is anyone held accountable for the smuggling of these children?
So that is now an issue of country by country basis, because smuggling is an offense that is committed to the country, the state. So the state has to hold accountable the players in the trafficking syndicate, in the smuggling syndicate. In this case, it can be the transporters. Sometimes, depending on how the laws is operating, it could be the transporters themselves or the parents themselves, they should be held accountable. But for us as an organization, we want to promote safe child migration, and we discourage the travel of children through smuggling cases. Children should be transported in safe ways where they are accompanied by an adult. If there is no adult, but at least there should be means to identify that these children are safe.
I mean, again, I'll reiterate this, that you and I both agree that smuggling, trafficking, different things, both of them illegal. But when we're talking about children being smuggled to perhaps be reunited with their family members in South Africa, one would think, okay, well, it's a little bit more, I suppose one could argue even heartwarming, if you will, if that's how you want to look at it. But the concern is at the end of the day, you do have children that are undocumented moving through one country into another. So very little paper trail of what happens to those children on their way into South Africa. The dangers that they face outside of being smuggled into the country, the dangers that they face being so exposed.
Yes, so we actually are worried because in some instances, cases of smuggling can then turn into trafficking, where now the children are held hostage, probably because the family cannot pay the price to the smugglers. And that is not good instances. And also because these children are undocumented, it is easy now even to sell them to the next trafficker. So that is why we highly discourage the smuggling of children who are undocumented without paper trail, as you are referring to. So we encourage that whenever children are being transported between countries, there needs to be proper record of who are they coming from and where are they going, who is going to receive these children, and also to ensure that they are received by the rightful person that has been said to be the one receiving them. So there are dangers in smuggling children.
Yeah, I'm remembering from the Border Management Authority's press briefing on Sunday, one of the things they talked about was some of these children were as young as 8, even younger in some instances. So we're talking about incredibly vulnerable children who would not be able to defend themselves if something had gone wrong. Your message to parents, particularly Zim nationals perhaps that are living in South Africa and are looking to bring their children closer to them, and looking at that smuggling as an option to get them into South Africa?
Our message to the parents out there is just to encourage them that there are ways to ensure safety of children when they are traveling. Like I have indicated, in most instances, the Department of Home Affairs would require an affidavit, which has got the details of who is this person that is traveling with the child, and also to ensure that the children there have passports, because the child protection risk that children are exposed to are quite high than the price of just putting a child on a bus alone. So let us work to ensure that we are protecting children, because one mistake that happens with this journey can ruin the rest of their life. So we are encouraging the parents to really ensure that children are migrating safely.
Yeah, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Patience Zhou there from Save the Children. We really do appreciate your time.